Shalom, everyone. It is
Shalom.
February the 1st. We are talking about Parshat Yitro this week. Yitro, a really extraordinary character. And as usual, the more we look at the text, the more there are stories within stories within stories of the text. I'm going to focus on one part of the story. We'll do a kind of 30,000 feet and then really focused. And this is going to be a much more textually oriented class than my other classes. I have to say I'm falling into my old habits of focusing solely on the text. I really didn't pull up any video samples to illustrate the issues here, and maybe you'll provide some other illustrations of the main theme here. I want to start by saying that the Parsha includes, of course, Mount Sinai, which in itself is a huge text and something that we deserve. It deserves study. But I've been interested in the interpersonal dynamics of the different characters, especially Moshe and Paro up until now. And I'm still kind of listening to the echoes in a few weeks ago where Paro wanted a blessing, Moshe didn't want to give it to him. And I got a real picture, a real portrait of Moshe that he's a tough dude. He's not only is he a tough dude, he is there are things that he has to learn about being a leader and things that he has to learn about himself. And he requires a certain kind of mentorship. And of course, that is part of the theme of Yitro. Yitro, as we open this Parsha, is functioning as a mentor to Moshe. It's hard to put it all together because Moshe is not a young man here. Moshe, according to the Torah earlier, is 80 years old. So you would think that he would know a thing or two by the time that he was 80. I don't want to make any allusions to anybody here, okay? You think that he would know a thing or two. He's been around the bush, literally, the burning bush. But what he hasn't been a leader. And leadership has its own learning trajectory. And Moshe is going to learn a few big lessons here. And the relationship between Yitro and Moshe is really one that needs to be examined under the microscope. And I think in the way that Yitro finally conveys the message to Moshe, there is much more conveyed here. So the overall theme is what's going on between Yitro and Moshe, and the very precise theme is how does the poetry, the structure of the text, enhance and develop the message of the relationship? I think that, to me, is the much more powerful and interesting question. It summons all of our poetic sensibilities, and we all have them. So don't be shy. This is a complicated class, but I know we are going to enjoy this. I'm going to do my best to convey it as extensively in the limitations of this medium. So let's go right into the story. This is the big story from 30,000 feet. And then we're going to zero in on the key passage. Okay, here, sorry, I'm going to do the sharing. And here we go. Share. Jethro and Moses. What's going on? Okay. So, Vayishma Yitro. Jethro, priest of Midian. Moses' father-in-law heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people. How the Lord had brought Israel from Egypt. So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after she had been sent home. and her two sons, of whom one was named Gershom, that is to say, I have been a stranger in a foreign land, and the other was named Eliezer, meaning the God of my father was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought Moses' sons and wife to him in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. He sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and he bowed low and he kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Moses then recounted to his father-in-law everything that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships that had befallen them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the kindness that the Lord had shown Israel when he delivered them from the Egyptians. Blessed be the Lord, Yitro said, who delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh, and who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, yes, by the result of their very schemes against the people. And Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to partake of the meal before God with Moses' father-in-law. Next day, Moses sat as magistrate among the people, while the people stood about Moses from morning until evening. But when Moses' father-in-law saw how much he had to do for the people, he said, what is this you are doing to the people? Why do you act alone while all the people stand about you from morning until evening? Moses replied to his father-in-law, it is because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes before me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make known the laws and teachings of God. But Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing you are doing is not right. You will surely wear yourself out, and these people as well, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You represent the people before God. You bring the disputes before God, and enjoin upon them the laws and the teachings, and make known to them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow. You shall also seek out from among the people capable men who fear God, trustworthy men who spurn ill-gotten gain. Set these over them as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, and fifties, and tens, and let them judge the people at all times. Have them bring every major dispute to you, but let them decide every minor dispute themselves. Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the burden with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, you will be able to bear up. And all the people too will go home unwearied. And so Moses heeded his father-in-law and did just as he said. Moses chose capable men out of Israel and appointed them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and they judged the people at all times. The difficult matters they would bring to Moses, and all the minor matters they would decide themselves. Then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he went his way to his own land. I have to say, this is just a remarkable story. It's last in Breshit, we me and my colleagues, we kept saying, God bless the narrator, God bless the biblical narrator. And I have to say, this story, I didn't want to talk about it. I thought we could focus more on the Ten Commandments. This is a perfect story. There's so much going on in this story. We can't even begin. But let's try our best, and let's figure out what's going on. First of all, I'm going to keep the text up in front of you and keep us to the side here. What's going on just geographically between Moses, Jethro, Yitro, his wife Zipporah, and their two sons? What do you recall going on here? Okay, so I'm gonna just hasten this by saying here's what we know. We know that when God revealed to Moses the first time at the bush, and then basically told him to go. Moses goes to his father-in-law, and he says, "You know, God told me to go," and Yitro basically said, "You do what you have to do." The scene is that he goes with his wife and his sons. There's this very mysterious moment where they are being attacked, and she circumcises the sons and puts the blood on his legs, and is a protection. Don't ask me to interpret that. That is just too complicated for this. But after that moment, we never hear of Zipporah, the wife, and the children until now, which means that they were sent back, as is this case here. Achar shiluchea, verse 2. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after she had been sent home. So at some point, he sent her home. When? I am not sure. But what's fascinating and what's important for our own importance is, what's important for us to understand is that Moses has been functioning alone without the family support for the duration of the petitions to Pharaoh, the 10 plagues, the slaying of the firstborn, the splitting of the sea, and up until now. Now, on the one hand, this makes a great deal of sense. On the other hand, it's a problem. It makes a great deal of sense because, look, he's the leader. He can't be the husband right now. He can't be the father right now. This is really one of the great challenges of leadership. And this is true in every position of leadership, whether it's political, whether it's business, whether it's profession, whether it's religious or whatever. The leader has many different kinds of priorities. The priority is to the people, but there's also the private priority to the family, and these are often in conflict. It's not an accident that when members of Congress or other people in political leadership resign, they say, quote, "I want to spend more time with my family." Okay. Now, we all know what that means. I don't want to be cynical about it, but people resign from leadership because they're no longer popular. And I want to spend more time with my family, is the excuse that's often given. But in many cases, it's also quite true, and that families pay a huge price. Now, families, and specifically spouses, and in pre-2020 times, it was mostly, the women signed on for this, okay? So most of the, spouses of the leader, in this case, Zipporah, she would be aware that he is the leader, except for the fact that when she met him, he was a shepherd, right? He wasn't a leader. He was just a so the fact that he gets summoned back to Egypt to lead the people out, this may be new to her. Okay, so we have to be aware that she has a role here. Now, I want to just give you a hint as to what my punchline of the whole text, the whole study is going to be, but this comes out very effectively in the English translation, and of course, it's much more effective in the Hebrew. So the question to the casual reader is, how is Yitro referred to in almost each instance of the
Yeah.
text. Go ahead, Ilana.
I wanted to say it before, but I didn't get a chance to count how many times does it say Yitro, the father-in-law, the
Okay,
father-in-law, the father-in-law, the father. Many
so
times. So maybe he came to remind Moshe that family is important
all
because
right, so we're gonna hold the thought. Okay, I'll give you a little teaser, but this is done literarily. Okay, Yitro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. Okay,
uh,
so the Torah, the narrative is telling you right from the beginning of the story and introducing him, and it's actually reintroducing him because we saw him earlier on when she was married. Okay, but Yitro Kohen Midyan, he is a powerful figurehead in Midian, a priest of Midian, and we're going to kind of give him an advancement here, a promotion, and we'll say he is the high priest of Midian, although it's not Kohen Gadol Midian, but he is among the elders, leaders, the highest echelons of Midianite society. Okay, he's also Choten Moshe. And notice within the first, you got Choten Moshe here in verse Aleph, Vayikach Choten Moshe, second verse 3, verse 2, okay? Vayivo Choten, Yitro Choten Moshe, verse 5, Vayomer El Moshe, Ani Chotencha, Yitro Vayilecha, I am your father-in-law, Vayetze Moshe Likra Chotno, his father-in-law, Vayesaper Moshe Lechotno, father-in-law. Okay, so, and here it's in verse 9, only instance where it's Yitro without the Choten modifier, Vayichad Yitro. And so I interpret that in the second, I interpret that here as saying that Yitro is not only father-in-law in this verse, he is speaking for the Gentile world. He's speaking for the lovers of Jews. He's speaking for people who are not part of the people of Israel, and he's rejoicing as an outsider. So therefore, the modifier of Yitro as father-in-law is not applicable here. He is the total outsider. And when he makes the benediction by Omer Yitro, he's also speaking as an outsider. Okay, but then back to verse 12, Vayikach Yitro Choten Moshe Ola Uzvachin. So this is an amazing scene. An amazing scene is that I want to say, without any kind of evidence here, other than the text, that Yitro is making, in the very most general sense, he's making a feast here. Ola uzvachim, he's making a burnt offering. Now that is significant. Gentiles don't get to make burnt offerings. So this is prior to the whole Levitical system where it's only, Israelites, Jews that make burnt offerings. So here is the Midianite priest making a burnt offering to God. It's a sacred moment. So it's a solidarity moment in which the outsider is becoming the insider again. So Choten Moshe again, Ola, the burnt offering that goes only to God. But Zvachim are feastal sacrifices. Zvachim is the Passover sacrifice is a zevach, right? Recall that in the eve of Passover, I made a whole point where they didn't eat the thing and it all became an olah because they left it on the spit. They left it burning. They didn't have time to eat it. So they ran out. But here, they're making a feast, okay? And the feast, I want to say it's a kind of Passover feast, but it could be they're declaring a festival. It's like, you know, um, it's like any major festival gathering. I'll give you just one little anecdote that comes to mind. I remember, when it was King Hussein died. Okay, so apparently, I don't remember where I heard this, but it was so vivid. So when Hussein died, there were some people, a former head of the Mossad was interviewed, and of course, they had met with Hussein dozens of times, okay? Way before the peace treaty. There were all sorts of secret relationships between Israel and Jordan. And at one point, prior to the peace treaty, um, because the Mossad gave Hussein information that really saved his life, Hussein invited the heads of the Mossad and Rabin and all. They all went to Amman, and he made a feast for them. And you can imagine, you know, the Middle Eastern feast. What do? You take your sheep and you make a zevach, and you make a big feast. Look, those of us who have been on our wonderful and we sorely miss being in Israel tours. Okay, I have had the chance to be in large gatherings in Israel where they trot out these masterful, wonderful chefs, and it's outdoors, and it's like you have never seen anything like this. I'm only saying this because last night, part of my leisure, I watch this Israeli show called Anachnu ala Mapit. It's about the Israeli culinary scene, and I felt so sad afterwards because we're missing being there. Okay, just incredible things that they're doing. So why go off on this? It's a feast that they're making, and notice that the feast that he's making is by Avo Aharon v'chol ziknei Yisrael lechol lechem in choten Moshe lifnei Elohim. I think that's a very significant verse. Okay, it tells us that this is the Mossad and the ministers and the Secret Service and the government. The people, Ziknei Yisrael. Who are the Ziknei Yisrael? They are the people that have been helping Moshe up until now and providing the kind of administrative assistance to Moshe and Aharon in bringing out the people. You recall that back in the early, when the information and the instructions are given, Moshe has to enlist the support of the Ziknei Yisrael. So they are getting rewarded here by Yitro. They're having a feast, a party. Okay, there's just no other way around this. They're having, lechol lechem is the biblical code language for they're making a big feast, a sacred feast, by the way. Lifnei ha'Elohim, lifnei ha'Elohim. This is a sacred feastal gathering where they are eating together with Yitro. Yitro, who is wealthy, we know that he's a shepherd, so he probably took a few of his sheep and fired up the grill and made a great feast for Moshe, Aaron, and the elders that has a sacred component to it. I doubt Rabin and Hussein that was any sacred component to it, but you get the point. Now, I'm reading this and I'm thinking like, oh my God, they didn't eat kosher. What's going on here? Did Yitro make a kosher feast? And it only says lechol lechem, right? They only ate the bread, but it can't. I'm sorry. It can't mean that they only ate bread. It's a feast. Get over it. They were, and I'm assuming here that A, these rules are not in place yet, or B, there is some kind of quasi proto-kashrut system that they are using. Okay, and I'm going way out on a limb here. Then I'm thinking like that. Of course, they understand that you slaughter an animal in a certain way and you don't eat the blood, etc., etc. I mean, that's a minor quibble here, but the point is that it's a feastal, sacred gathering of Moses, Aaron, and the elders. There's a hierarchy here. The people are not involved in this feast for obvious reasons. They just can't feed the whole people like this. I wonder if I was a regular Israelite and I saw my leaders going off for a big feast. Well, I just, came from the the sea, and I'm thirsty and hungry and don't have, only eating manna all day and only eating quail, and my leaders were going off to have a big banquet, how I'd feel. That's the skit that I'm going to write for next year. Okay, if I were an average Israelite, I'd be wanting to overthrow my leaders right away, because why do they get to eat and I don't get to eat? Okay, well, but that's part of the problem here. The problem is, what is the relationship now between Moses and the people? Okay, so notice that we now move in verse 13. We move into a different phase of the story. Okay, so we're out of sync on the page here with verse 13, but it's the next day. That is to say, the day after the feast. I'm just going to do some quick edits here. Okay. Okay. The next day, Vayhim Macharat, Vayeshev Moshe lishpot et ha'am. So what do you do all day? He's got to judge the people. What is he going to judge? Already, this is what's so amazing about the Torah. It's like, we're talking day 15, day 20 of the journey, and already there are fights going on. There are disputes there, and who knows what these disputes are? They could be of minor things, or they could be. The point is that when you govern a people, it's messy, right? Today it's snowing, right? So if you don't have a shovel, you borrow a shovel, and if you don't give it back, then you have a dispute with your neighbor. I mean, it could be something as trivial as that, or it could be a little more, less trivial. It could be matters of identity, marriage, birth, death, etc. I mean, things that are of moment. There could be violence among people. After all, you put people in a stressed situation, conflict is going to arise, and conflict certainly does arise. And Moshe has to adjudicate that as he thinks. Okay, so here, Vayhim Macharat, Vayeshev Moshe lishpot et ha'am. So we are assuming that when they have a problem, they don't know where to go. So someone said, you got to go to Moses. Vayamod ha'am Moshe. The people are standing against Moshe. Mina boker ad erev, from morning till night. So imagine, we are I got my vaccine last year, the first one, and it actually was very, very, efficient. There were no big lines, but there are places where there are big lines, right? Where you have to wait hours in line to get administered in whatever it is. Okay, I don't know how it was when you voted, how long you had to wait when you voted, or how long you have to wait when you get processed. Imagine all the times when you are processed. When we come off the plane and go to passport control, either in Newark or wherever we are, you have to wait in line. And sometimes it can be long, okay? And the worst thing is when there's only one little officer there, right? And there are hundreds of people coming off the plane. It's insane. It's insane, okay? So now, of course, they have all sorts of electronic kiosks and of course, many officers. But there's one officer and there's a lineup of people from the morning to the evening. It's insane, okay? And so Yitro sees this, Vayar chotem Moshe et kol asher hu oseh la'am, and Yitro saw all the things, verse 14, where he says, but when Yitro saw, Moses' father and saw how much he had to do for the people, et kol asher hu oseh la'am, so what does he say? Vayomer, ma davar hazeh asher ata oseh lahem. What are you doing? Madua ata yoshev levadecha. Why are you alone? Okay, and just put a little mental asterisk and bold face on that word alone. Madua ata yoshev levadecha. Why are you alone? Okay, again, bold face that word levadecha. And the whole people is doing so. Here, Yitro, they had a big feast. The next day, he's sitting all day up until the evening. He's saying, you're out of your mind. You're insane. This is crazy. What are you doing? What are you doing by yourself? What are you doing by alone? So, and because they think that when they speak, they come to me, they are getting the divine answer. They're looking for answers for their problems. This one had a fight with this one. They want adjudication. And I am their adjudicator. I have the direct line to God, and I'm going to judge them. I am the leader. So I have that role. So he says, Ki yalem davar, bailan. When they have an issue, they come to me. V'shav fatati, and I judge them. Beinish uvein re'ehu, between this one and that one. V'hodati et chukei Elohim v'toratav. He's very proud here. And I'm the one that gets to administer the laws of God and his teachings to the people. So then Yitro says to him, you are out of your mind. You are insane. Okay? And this is my text. It starts from 17. And I want you to hear, the English doesn't capture this. The Hebrew is actually quite elaborate in its poetic structure. Okay? And I will show you in a minute and blow you all away in the poetic structure of the following. From verse 17. That's the preamble. And the father-in-law of Moses says to him, Lo tov adavar asher ata oseh. Not good, the thing that you are doing. Nabol tibol. You're going to go crazy. You're going to go confused. You're going to go be overwhelmed. Gamata. You. Gama hamazeh. And the people, asher imach, that are with you, i.e., they're not going to be with you the more you do this, okay? Gamata, gama mazeh, ki chaved mimcha hadavar. This davar is too hard for you. You have to understand that, he's saying. Lo tuchal asohu levadecha. You can't do this by yourself alone. And we had the word levado before, okay? And we have here davar, lo tova davar, mimcha davar. This thing is too difficult. Ata means abruptly, now. Shma b'koli, listen to me, listen to my voice, which means pay attention, heed to me, means understand what I'm saying, okay? Listen to what I'm saying. I'atzecha, I'm going to give you some advice. V'yihi Elohim imach, and let God be with you. Okay, they need the muting. V'yeh ata la'am. I'm sorry, I need everyone muted, please.
Linda Diamond's phone.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, just a second. There we go. Okay, so back to here. So I will advise you, and let God be with you. You'll be the nation to God, and you'll bring the things to God. You will teach them, you will warn them, you will in private, the laws and the teachings, and you will instruct them, the way to go, and the thing that they are to do. And you will see, you will appoint people from the people, the nation, Anshe Chayil Yirei Elohim, Anshe Emet Sone Batza. And this is a highly poeticized phrase. I'll show you more in detail. People of strength, God fears. People of truth, those who hate evil. v'samt aleim, and you'll place among them sarei alafim, sarei meot, sarei chamishim, sarei asarot. Officers of thousands, officers of hundreds, officers of 50, officers of 10. In other words, you're going to create a regimental structure for the people in units of thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. The shaftu etam, and they will judge the people at all times, and let them bring the davar, the good thing, the big things to you, and the small things they will judge, and you'll lighten it up. And if this they do, this is, and this is what God is telling you, you'll withstand. And if you do this, everybody's going to be at peace. Okay? Well, that's a big statement. Okay? I counted all the words in that statement. 116 words in that statement. And as usual, I have my own shtick when it comes to the numbers of words and texts. And I am not disappointed in this text. This text is so rich and so elaborate and so perfectly composed that all my little tricks that I've discovered are found in there. And I shall show you them now. And I even forgot to put a couple of them in there before. Okay? So here we go, the pièce de résistance. We're calling this Yitro the poet. Okay? So first, I'm going to pull over here. I'm going to ask you what it says, Vayomer choten Moshe elav, lo tov. So my statement here is, and it's, where do we see this phrase? Where do we see the phrase in the Bible? And I know you know enough Bible to know where this phrase, not good, lo tov, your biblical ear has been trained by Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And
for a man to be alone.
It is not good for man to be alone. Bingo. Okay. Who else thought that? I'm going to put everybody up here again. You all, okay. So Marlene, tell me what's the context of that?
When God creates a helpmate for Adam.
Okay. So and what happens just before that? You know, Adam is with the animals, right? And he sees all the animals, and it's just, and what's the existential condition of the human being at that point? He's a solitary figure. Okay. So I will propose the following here to my worthy class and say, do you think it's a coincidence that the Torah uses this text, or do you think by having Yitro use these words, he is summoning the other story?
No.
Eli Ehrlich, give me the contrary opinion.
I'm sorry. I mean, there are two situations where lo tov is very meaningful and very good, but I don't see them as similar situations. There are many times that we say lo tov, it's not good.
Okay.
Lots of things in life are not good, but
okay, so I agree with you. There are many times that we say that.
Yeah.
There's only one other time that the Bible says that. Okay.
it's the only time.
And so the Bible teaches you how to read the Bible. And when the word is used only in one other place, you have to ask the question, okay? This is how the game works here, okay? This is how it works. When something is said here and then said elsewhere, lech lecha, okay? It's the same idea. When God says to Abraham, lech lecha, in chapter 12, verse 1, go forth, and then God says to Abraham, lech lecha, in chapter 22, verse 1, you put it together. Lech lecha me'artzecha, go for this reason. Lech lecha el eretz Moriah, go for that reason. It's the same. So I'm saying this is the sophisticated nature of the biblical narrative in the biblical text. The biblical text is a layered text, and the assumption, okay, and I know that I'm bringing a huge assumption here, but it's the assumption of the tradition, of the literary tradition of the text. It is something is said somewhere, it has a meaning, and that helps us understand when it's used somewhere else.
Yeah,
So,
without a woman, you can't get along.
I'm sorry?
Without a woman, you can't get along.
Well, yes, that's the point. No, it's one of the points here, okay?
Yeah.
Which is, one second, Ilana, which is that he is going back to the paradigm of the ultimate singlehood, okay? Adam and creation, Moses and the people. It's the same thing. It's look, I made the point last week, okay? I didn't really elaborate in shul, but I made the point when it says vaya yalech Israel betoch hayam bayabasha, in my cheat, I wrote that it's not an accident that the text uses the word yabasha to refer to the dry land at the splitting of the sea. When is the only other time that the Torah uses the word yabasha? At creation. And so what's the implication? The implication is that this is a moment akin to creation. The only other times that are significant where levado is used is at the beginning. There is also vayivater levado, Yaakov is by himself, okay? Another, which is extraordinary, and I think we could kind of lay it over here too. But the more important moment is lo tov heyod adam levado. It's not good for a human being to be alone in the face of all creation. Here, Moshe is alone in front of all the people. He has no partner. Alana, go ahead.
So there are two similarities. The first one is comparing Adam that shouldn't be alone, lo tov heyod adam levado, and comparing it to Moshe being without Tzipora. So it's not a good idea to be without your wife.
Precisely.
So Yitro is really acting like a good family man, like a typical father-in-law in a way, who is worried about his daughter.
So,
that she should have done. And the other one, lo tov heyod adam levado, you shouldn't do your job all by yourself.
I'm laughing because the horse left the barn, okay? What does he want? What does Yitro want? He sees that Moshe is busy all day. Do you think Yitro is worried about Moshe?
I'm for his daughter.
Yes. Do you think Yitro is worried about his son-in-law? Of course he is. He's a good guy. Yitro, by all stretches of the imagination, by all estimations, he's a decent fellow. But he just brought his daughter back to him, okay? And he's going to bring his daughter. I have 3 daughters, okay? I would say, as a father of 3 daughters, if I had a future son-in-law who spent all day, at his office, I'd be concerned. Bob.
I wanted to say, complementary to what you've suggested, another perspective, and that relates to not being alone may mean also the ability to coexist with others. And I read somewhere that Yitro was one of Pharaoh's advisors, and that he actually counseled Pharaoh to coexist rather than to destroy, as Bilam and Eov said. So to what degree is this a message about coexistence is important, whether with a spouse, with the society, and sort of a mixture of things, him coming from idolatry. So that's another reflection.
So you're citing a lovely midrash, which picks up. I think the midrashim are all picking up on the clues and the kind of hints in the text. And what I'm seeing on the surface of the text is he's a mensch. You can't deny that the guy is a good guy. After all, when you think of all the different reactions that a person can have, when you see, I'll give you one reaction, which is, Moses tells him everything that God did. And so his reaction is, Baruch Hashem, blessed God. Another person can react, well, God didn't do that for me. God, that's good for you, but that's not the way God does it for me. I don't get that kind of attention. That's a different kind of, and I mean, I'm saying it, comically, okay? But there are dozens of different reactions that a person can have, including blasé, including I don't care, including, well, it's your God, my God also does other things. No, he's a mensch, okay? And so what the midrash that you're citing picks up on is that Bilam, who's you'll forgive me, a bastard, okay? And who's the other one? Is who? Eov, I think, is in there, right?
Yeah.
Job. Job is a genuinely pious individual, but and what is he saying there? Do you
I
remember?
think he's indifferent to
Job is
doing
indifferent.
this or that.
Okay, because Job is immersed in his own,
Neutral.
self. Yitro is the paradigm of the person that loves. He's the paradigm of the Philo-Semite. He is, in England prior to the beginning of Israel, there was a whole movement of Zionist Christians. There were people who loved the idea of Jews going back to Israel. There, George Eliot and her famous novel, right? Which is, what was her novel? She was a Philo-Semite. She loved the Jews. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I want to bring an older interpretation. Yitro is the first management consultant.
Also true.
So he sees Moshe doing everything himself. Now, I was in many businesses where I saw an entrepreneur trying to run the whole business by himself. And we had to convince him to hire staff and to let other people do things and to develop relationships with those people.
Yep.
So this is the same thing. He sees what's going on. First of all, Yitro is a leader. He's the priest of Midian. So he's already a leader of a tribal country, and he's expressing his knowledge to Moses and teaching him how to be a manager, not an entrepreneur.
So I agree with you. I think that is part of what's going on here. On the very surface, of course, he's saying you need to structure your organization. Literally, you don't have no structure, and this is going to be devastating for you.
Right. Well, look at the next.
But he's got a whole set of reasons for doing this. In addition, I mean, why would he be so concerned about him? He's concerned about his daughter. Okay, that's what he is. Go ahead, Ruth.
I have another question about the family relationship. Like Ilana pointed out that they kept saying father-in-law, father-in-law. So Yitro shows up with Tzipporah, who Moshe has been ignoring, but the text also says her sons. What the heck do you mean her sons? He's bringing Moshe his own sons.
Yes. Okay. Very
sons.
good.
What
Very
is
good.
that
Very,
about?
very perceptive reading. So the text does say her sons, and that's the text way of saying, Moshe, you have not been a father. You have not been the father. You fathered them, but you've been absent. You have not raised them. I think that, this is the pathos in this text is just so rich, because the text is not only about the administrative challenges of being the leader. The text is now about being a man and being a father and being a husband, all of which the fatherhood and husbandhood is subordinate, has to be subordinate to his leadership. And this, by the way, will appear again in the Torah when Miriam and Aaron speak about, Moses' wife. Okay, let me take a few more minutes to just illustrate the great poetic structure here. Okay, so Lo Tov, that reminds us of this. Nabol Tibol. All right, what does that remind us of? Well, where is the only other place that the word, the shoresh balal, occurs prior to this? And that is the Tower of Babel. What happened in the Tower of Babel? You're going to go up and want to storm heaven. You want to be God. And God is God Balal. You get as a reaction to your own desire for authority, God teaches you a thing or two and mixes you up. Okay? And Labol Tibol means that's what's going to happen. If you have the presumption in your mind that you're going to be God to them, Nabol Tibol. It's a Babel story, Tower of Babel illusion here. Okay, I know, Ellie, you're not going to agree with me, but
No, I'm just thinking about the characters. I don't know of any other biblical character. Of course, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I don't know of any other biblical character who gets such covet. He has never done anything wrong or negative.
Yitro.
He's perfect.
He's a great guy.
Even when he's admonishing Moshe and saying you're neglecting your wife and your child and your children, he does it in a positive way.
Okay.
He's really an exemplary person.
Perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to take a few more minutes just to give you some of the poetics here. Okay. So I've said lotov and nabol tibol. Look at the word ata. I highlight. Note the repetition. Ata, ata, ata. Heveta ata. His heart. Ta, hoda, ta, ve ata. Samta, okay? Ve'yachalta. All right, there are 10 times that ata is in there. That is a kind of nice poetic stitching, okay? And then here is another ninefold repetition. Imach, mimcha, levadecha, iatzcha, imach, okay? And back there, we alech elecha elayech alecha leitar b'marin, Herman.
But he's talking directly to Moshe. He's not talking to or alluding to somebody who might be a different kind of a leader. He's saying specifically. So of course it has to be in Avecha and
I know. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that the man is being given a Shakespearean text here that is so rich and developed in terms of its architecture and poetics, the force of which is to zero in by repeating ata, 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 ata. He is saying, look, you guy, and he's saying it nicely, by the way, you. And the message after all that repetition is, look, you think this is about you. This is not about you. This is about you getting squashed under the immensity of this. You think you might be so great. Nobody, no human being can handle this the way you do. You can't micromanage the people. You can't, be the president of the United States and also book the tennis court times, okay? To cite an example. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Rabbi, in terms of your graphic organizer,
yes,
and the structure of the text, if every word in the Torah means something, every word in the Torah has a definite purpose. It's not just there to have words. It means something. Then absolutely, these specific repetitions are for emphasis, of course, as you said, and
yes.
Also bringing the connections together between a past event and a present event, because every word means something. This has to make sense to me that way.
Absolutely. So I mean, and here are another some other elements. I like to focus on the midpoints of the text. The midpoint of the whole text is it's a shift. V'ata, you. That's there are 116 words in this little speech. Word 57, right at the 58, v'ata. And then the first part, there are in the first 57 words, the middle is Mehi Elohim imach. Okay, so the subtext is, look, you can't do this by yourself. You are not God. Let God be with you. That's really important. And the real importance of the whole thing is you have to appoint for the people. And look at I highlighted the way this is the central core of this text. Anshe chayil yirei Elohim, anshe emet sonei vatza. That's poetics, biblical poetics 101. Parallelism, elements that are parallel to one another. Men of valor, who are fearful, men of truth, people who are implacable. The sampa alehem, place them among them. And then here, chieftains of thousands, officers of hundreds, officers of 50, officers. So you have two elements in this verse, the moral element and the administrative element. That's what the impact of this statement is. It's you need people who are good and you need people who can function. If you only have people who can function, it's irrelevant. If you only have people who are good, it's irrelevant. You need people who can be functional and who are good, okay? I can put the best people in my cabinet, but if they don't know how to function, it's irrelevant, okay? Call a davar again, v'yaviu elecha yishpetu. The whole text shifts from the second person to the third person here, okay? And how does it end? And we are ending on this note. That Gam kol ha'am hazeh al mikomo yavo b'shalom. So I have to say, this is the Bible's way of teaching us. This is pure joy, because it's saying that peace is available to you within the mess of life. Yavo b'shalom means you have all these people in an insanity of bureaucracy, and the peace is attainable if you place a structure that is effective administratively and a structure that is effective morally and also has the idea of teaching God's Torah to you. That's how you get to shalom. That's how you get to peace. Now, why is this a fitting ending to the word? Because the text starts off with lo tov. Lo tov and shalom. Well, would you believe it or not, that the antithesis of peace is evil? In many other places, and I'll show you in a second, where this parallel occurs, you have these words in parallel, the opposite parallel, okay? And I will bring that up in 2 seconds. 1 second.
What happened to apathy?
Apathy is not the antithesis, is not. Sorry. It is this word. Where is my Google Chrome? Oops, wrong one. Here we go. Do you see these verses from Tehillim? Sur meira va'aseh tov b'kei shalom b'radfehu. So shalom is the antithetical opposite to evil. Shun evil and do good, seek peace, it really should say, and pursue it. Leman v'rechai v're'ai. So I don't want to make a big tzimus out of this, but ra and re'ai, the word re'ai is also opposite to shalom. And this might be very, very clever in the text, because Yitro is also referred to as a re'ah, a friend of Moshe, okay? So there's something implicit here between that parallel. But merma b'lev chorshi ra u'leyotzei shalom simcha. Deceit is in the minds of those who plot evil. For those who plan good, there is joy. Yotzei shalom, yotzei peace. All right. Yotzer or uvore choshech, oseh shalom uvore ra. Shalom and ra. Okay. And those are 4 instances, there could be more, of where these terms are parallel. So what Yitro is saying really is there's an overt message, a medium message, and a deep message. The overt message is Steve Parkoff is saying, yeah, you need a management consultant, you're going to go crazy. That's the surface. The middle message is, hey, I got a daughter here. I'm leaving her with you. If you don't pay attention to her, you're going to have a lot of trouble, okay? Because this is no good, and you're going to be alone, and you can't be alone, and you need your support. And that's the story here. And these two aspects of your life are in conflict. There's no way around it. We understand that. And then there's the deeper message, which is, in order for you to attain a peace in the people, you need to do this. There is more at stake here. Al mikomo yavo v'shalom. We need to get the people to its destination in peace. And without this, it's over. It's over. All the miracles in the world will not be able to sustain the cohesion of the people if they don't have effective and good leadership. Go ahead, Alana. Unmute yourself. Unmute, and I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Go.
It's very interesting to pay attention to the requirements of the judges, because later on, when they want a king, it also states exactly the characteristics that a king should have in order to be a king. So it's nice to compare again, the requirements of the judges and the requirement of the king later on. And also these days that we have the changes of leaders in America and Israel, are they following these requirements?
So this is, our constant lament. The lament about leaders is that leaders are not effective, or leaders are not moral. And it's rare, unfortunately, in the history of political life, that you have the leader that combines moral rectitude with administrative effectiveness. I don't know what Lincoln's administrative ability was, but he was masterful as a politician. There's no question about that. And he was a deeply moral person. In the biographies that I've read about Lincoln, one of the amazing things that comes out in, the Doris Kearns Goodwin biography is a team of rivals. He's able to manage opposing forces, I think, better than any other leader that America has had. That's why, people refer to him as the greatest president. Look, without being too critical about present leaders, what people, I think, criticize of present leaders is that they put their own interests above the interests of the people, and that itself is, I think, a political message here. On the one hand, Yitro is saying, I need you to have your own personal interest here. Your own personal interest is to save your wife and your children, and to maintain that. And there is an implicit understanding that it's going to be difficult. He is, Yitro, I say he's a mensch, because he could have said, Tzipora, this is what you're in for. You're going to never see the guy. He's the leader. He doesn't say that. And of course, we never really hear of his children again. And we rarely, there's only one instance where she is remarked upon as a kind of subsidiary second, and only out of earshot. She really doesn't have any active role that we know of in the text. There's never, you never have a scene where Moshe goes home at night and Tzipora whispers, I think, with regard to that situation that you had with Korach, you need to take him out. She never says that to him. Bob, go ahead.
I'm also wondering if Yitro is sending a fourth mystical message, especially given the number of times the word 10 in different forms appears, and that is to seek out the sparks of holiness that exist in all of the people there, despite all the kvetching and complaining and other stuff going on. And a good leader also empowers by seeing the goodness in others.
So that's very charitable here, very spiritual, very Kabbalistic of you. I'm less inclined here to that. I think that there's a much more pedantic, pedestrian, motive here, which is gotta have control. You gotta organize people. They have to be able to cooperate with some structure. Otherwise, it's over. Otherwise, it's over. Okay. The other call, we can go on. This story, as I said, is a perfect story. It's I only focused on what he said. If you put all the pieces together, you see that it's a richly woven, elaborately told and structured and poetic text. And my theme of that the poetry enhances the message, I think is brought home very, very well in this text. The poetic structure with all the parallelisms, repetitions, and emphasis really, really explain to us that there's something deep going on in this story. The depth is, here's a man who loves his daughter, who loves his grandchildren, who really, really is a mensch, who loves his son-in-law, only wants the good. He's got wisdom. He wants to impart this, and he wants the success of the project because he knows that it will be good for humanity. That's the depth of his understanding. I think that that's a good place to conclude with that.
And because Yitro was such a great guy, we named the Parsha after him.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Todar